Quick question. How many of you came here tonight expecting or hoping or desiring a politically correct message? Nobody? Are you serious?
They're smart.
Wow. So I take it none of you have been on a college campus lately. Right, okay. Well, I can tell you this. You're not going to hear a politically correct message tonight. I can promise you that. And for those of you who have never really thought about it, what does politically correct actually mean? Okay? It's a different narrative than correct. If it was correct, there wouldn't be a need for the term politically correct. Amen? Well, before I get into the message, let me just express my appreciation to Pastor JT for inviting me back. I was here several months ago, and maybe some of you were here when I had the opportunity to speak. So I'm very appreciative. This morning I spoke at both services, and the response that I received from people who were here was really uplifting. And I can only hope and pray that you will feel similarly this evening. I also want to take a moment to thank a dear personal friend of mine who is here this evening, Jim Ralston, who I went to school with way back when. He and I were on the track team together in high school, and Jim is the one who really made the connection for me at Starting Point. And it's turned out to be a wonderful blessing, so I want to extend my deep, deep appreciation to Jim Ralston. Thank you very much, okay? Oh, and his lovely wife, Lorna. All right. So let's talk about a religion that many of us have heard of, but very few of us know much about. And that is Islam. We've all heard of Islam. We've seen mosques and what have you. But let me just share with you what I'm going to talk to you about tonight you may not have heard before. And some of it isn't going to be pretty. But like a nice Jewish boy who was brought up with the name Robert Zimmerman, who became known as Bob Dylan, who became a believer in 1979, he once said, "Don't ask me nothing about nothing, I just might tell you the truth." And what I'm going to share with you tonight is factual. Now, you might ask, what is a Jewish believer in Jesus Yeshua? How does he qualify to talk to me about Islam? Is he Muslim? No, I'm not. My wife and I had the great blessing to become close friends with a former Muslim terrorist who became a believer, thankfully. His name is Walid Shoebat. And back when we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, hold your applause, when we were on the left coast, we became friends with Walid Shoebat. He was in our home many times. And this former Muslim who became a believer, and not just going from Muslim to quote-unquote Christian, right into classic Christianity, replacement theology type of Christian, he went from being a Muslim terrorist to loving the Jewish people and Israel. Now that is one heck of a U-turn. As soon as he did that, they put out a fatwa. What's a fatwa? It's a legal ruling in Islam. They wanted him dead. I keep echoing a little bit. Can that be cleaned up a little? Okay. Can you still hear me? Okay. So Walid spoke in front of audiences that hated him, but he was fearless for God. He defended the Jewish people. He defended Israel. We had a lot of respect for Waleed. We haven't seen him for a number of years, but for about 6 or 7 years, we were very close. He taught us about Islam. And he was mentored by the same imam who mentored Osama bin Laden. So he's got really strong credentials. So let's unpack this message a little bit. Oh, I need to point this way, sorry. On the left, you see praying hands. In the middle, you see an Orthodox Jew. And on the right, you see who we're going to talk about tonight. Now, before I get into this message, I want to make an unqualified statement. Am I here to trash Islam? No. Am I here to indict all Muslims? No. The overwhelming majority of Muslims are regular folks. They are not terrorists. They are not jihadists, okay? They are just everyday folks that want to live a life and go about their business. The reason that I am here tonight unpacking Islam is because there happens to be too many of the ones that we should be concerned about. That's the problem. And I'll share some numbers about that in a bit. This is what we're going to cover. We'll just go on past that so we don't need to get bogged down in that. Now, we all remember this guy. The United States collectively got rid of their guilty conscience in 2008 by electing the first black president. Okay, is that a good thing? Sure it is. I don't like quota systems, though, I have to tell you. And if the overriding reason for electing him was because of his skin color, then I have a problem with that. United Airlines several years ago made a public statement saying that they were going to hire 5,000 new pilots over the next several years. And they were going to guarantee that at least 50% of them were going to be minorities. Now, I don't know about you guys. When I'm 40,000 feet in the air, going 600 or 700 miles an hour, I don't care if the pilot is a donkey or an ape. I don't care. I just want the most qualified person, period. But we're in an age of political correctness. So Barack Hussein Obama became the president, and he made that statement that the United States would never be at war with Islam. This is Islam. It's a total social club, if you will. The model is known as the Caliphate. Islam's Messiah is the Mahdi. The goal is complete world domination, and they're en route to accomplish that right now. There are no individual rights. Any one of you lovely women who are in here tonight, in the world of fundamental Islam, you are property. You have no rights. Islam itself means submission. Now, we're believers. We have the gift of free will. That does not exist in Islam. You must follow the rules. And by the way, you're not allowed to leave Islam. As I said, when our friend Waleed Shoebat became a believer, he broke the rules. So they issued a fatwa. Can't do that in Islam. Compromise on any of these tenets is considered blasphemy. Blasphemy is punishable by death. Now, you're going to hear things, I want to repeat this because it needs to be repeated. You're going to hear things that don't resonate. It's almost like trying to put a round peg in a square hole. There are different types of Muslims. There are secular Muslims, basically like the Christians that go to church on Christmas and Easter and never go any other time of the year. Okay? So there's a lot of that in Islam. Again, please hear me. This is not an indictment of Islam in general. This is not an indictment of Muslims in general. There's devout and peaceful, there's fundamentalists, the jihadists, Sunni and Shiite. That's what I am speaking about. In Islam, there are approximately 1.9 billion Muslims in the world. Of that, roughly 80 to 85% are Sunni. The mother country for Sunni Muslims is Saudi Arabia. The holy city is Mecca. About 15 to 20% are Shia. They are more violent. The mother country for Shia Islam is Iran. We've all heard of Iran, the single largest sponsor of state terrorism in the world. The holy city is Qum. Now, they believe that their Mahdi, who was their Messiah, is going to one day appear from a hole in the ground in Qum. That's what they believe. You may consider it crazy, but that's what they believe. This is a map of the caliphate that was established back in 2014. Those are some of the more apocalyptic Muslim groups. The guy on the right has gone to his eternal reward with Allah. The Quran, that basically is their Bible. The Quran is a recitation of a series of revelations from Allah given to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel. Revelations took place between 609 and 632, which is when Muhammad went to his eternal reward. Okay. Let me turn a couple pages here. There are lots of other Islamic writings which are considered holy. Where did the term Allah or Allah come from? It's actually a term that dates back 2,000 years. It's actually, Allah is a pagan moon god of war. How many of you have heard somebody say, God and Allah are the same? May I respectfully disagree with that statement. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible, the God of Israel, is not Allah. Some people choose to believe that. That's fine. I think they're wrong. And I think the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would tell them that if they care to listen. This is called the Kaaba. Remember, if you've read the Bible, in Genesis 12:6, where God told Avram to go build me an altar? Where was that altar? Was it in Saudi Arabia? Was it in Alaska? It was in Israel. When you hear about what I'm sharing with you regarding Islam, think of at least two things. Their theology and their symbolism and their eschatology is not original. Keep in mind, Judaism came first, then came Christianity, and 700 years after Jesus Yeshua was born came Islam. they have not generated anything original. What they have done is they have taken what has come before and usurped it to suit their agenda. It's a different narrative. It's a different narrative. So Genesis 12:6, when Avram built an altar to serve God Almighty in Israel, Islam says, no, that's not right. This is what it is. It's this big black box, and every dedicated Muslim is required to come to Saudi Arabia at least once in their life and walk around the Kaaba. It's a different narrative. It's a totally different narrative. The Mahdi, okay, we're going to talk about their Messiah. That is the Mahdi. He's going to be a descendant of Muhammad. Okay? He'll reemerge, or he will emerge during a time of tremendous conflict and trouble. He'll establish justice and righteousness throughout the world and eradicate tyranny and oppression. He will be the caliph. He will lead a revolution and establish a new world order. Have we all heard of the term New World Order? Well, Islam has its own definition of New World Order. He will lead military action against all those who oppose him, and he'll make a 7-year peace treaty. With whom? Somebody with priestly lineage who's Jewish. We've all heard of the 7-year peace treaty, right? Not this version, but that's what we've heard. He will conquer Israel for Islam, and he will battle against the Jews. He'll establish Islamic world headquarters where? Not in Saudi Arabia, not in Iran, but in Jerusalem. He'll rule for 7 years. We've heard that, right? Only that's the Islamic version. He will cause Islam to be the only religion in the world. He will appear riding a white horse. Gee, there's an original concept. It's going to come riding through the clouds. And you're going to hear Paul Wilbur singing about, no, I'm kidding. He'll discover previously undiscovered biblical manuscripts, which he will use to argue with the Jews and cause them to renounce Judaism and become followers of Islam. He'll establish and he'll rediscover the Ark of the Covenant, which I think most of us hopefully believe is in Israel, in Jerusalem, maybe even underneath Temple Mount. But he's going to discover it in the Sea of Galilee. And they're going to put it on a FedEx truck and schlep it down to Saudi Arabia, no doubt. Okay? He'll be loved by all the people of the earth. This sounds warm and fuzzy. And it doesn't sound all that bad when you think about it. But again, it's nothing original. It was made up 700 years after Jesus walked the earth and thousands of years after Judaism first appeared. Now we'll do a little comparison. Jesus, Muhammad. Okay, again, I understand if you might find difficulty with this, but please bear with me because these are all factual, okay? We don't want to mistake Muhammad for Jesus. Not ever. On the left, he does not love those who reject him. Is that what our God tells us to do? No. Stoned women for adultery. Let who is without sin cast the first stone. Permitted stealing from unbelievers. We all know what the Bible says about stealing. Permitted lying. We all know what the Bible says about lying. Owned and traded slaves. Can anybody here or watching online send me a note and tell me how many slaves Jesus had? Unless, of course, you say you are a slave, voluntarily so, and you are emulating your Messiah, which is the epitome of discipleship, right? He beheaded 800 Jewish men and boys. Why? Why did he do that? He was ministering to them in Saudi Arabia, trying to convince them that he was the Messiah. And they were kind of going along with it for a period of time. They finally huddled and they said, sorry, you're not the guy. So the response to that rejection was, some people say that Islam gives you a headache. I say no, they just take the whole head. Actually, Waleed told me that. If anyone transgresses against him, do likewise. Jihad is the way of Allah, which elevates one's position in paradise by 100-fold. What does that mean? The holiest thing that you can do in Islam, again, fundamental Islam, not every day, okay? Waleed Shoebat once told us there are plenty of regular, everyday Muslims. There is nothing short of Islam. Islam is Islam. You don't compromise on it, okay? Now, as I said, the holiest thing you can do is be a martyr in Islam, okay? So this young man decides that he wants to be a shaheed, which is their term for martyr. And his parents are thrilled because they know two things. He's going to be elevated to paradise, and they're going to be able to go to all their friends and say, hey, our son is a martyr. It's holy. And he goes to paradise, 72 mansions, 72 bedrooms, 72 virgins. We've all heard this. So this young man, he decides that this is what he wants to do. So he goes out and he gets in a fight with another Muslim who's not obeying all the tenets of the faith. And they both die in the fight. Now he's immediately raptured, no pun intended, to paradise. And he's sitting in this bedroom and he looks across the room, and on the bed is an elderly lady. And he starts scratching his head going, what's going on? I thought it was 72 bedrooms, 72 virgins. She says, no, you heard wrong. It's a 72-year-old Virginian. What Islam tells us about Jesus, and this is important because I'm going to play a short clip in a little bit. He will return to earth in the last days near a mosque in Damascus. Not Israel, Damascus. He will be offered to lead prayer by the Mahdi, and he will respectfully decline in deference to the Mahdi, Isa, which is who the Muslims call Jesus. And he will declare that he is the leader of all Muslims. Jesus will be a faithful Muslim. He will make a pilgrimage to Mecca. He will destroy Christianity. Jesus will destroy Christianity, according to Islam. You're listening to this stuff and you're saying, is this guy crazy? I never heard this stuff before. This is fundamental Islam. He'll visit Muhammad's grave, and he'll salute Muhammad, where a dead Muhammad in the grave will return the salute. He'll kill the Antichrist. He'll remain on earth roughly for 40 years, during which time he will marry, have children, get fat, and die. I show you these pictures just to let you know there are some very well-known people who are Muslims. Okay? Are they terrorists? No. Just an FYI to let you know who they are. Now, here we get into a little bit of Islam on Islam. And what I wanted to share with you here, I told you there's some numbers. Our friend Walid Shoebat told us, as far as he was concerned, at least 25% of the world's Muslims are jihadists. That's a lot. For the purposes of this message, I'm using the term or the number 10%, which means, as I said at the beginning, the overwhelming majority of Muslims are not jihadists, are not terrorists. The problem is that if you accept the notion that 10% are, that translates into 190 million. 190 million. My friends, that is not a small number. If they all lived in one country, it would be in the top 10 of all the world's countries. Now, you are blessed to be living in the United States of America, in the wonderful state of Arizona. This is ostensibly a Christian country, okay? But the world is different when you leave the United States. We are Israeli citizens, my wife and I, and have been for the past 12 years. We have lived in Israel. It's in the heart of the Middle East. We have seen things that you would never see in the United States. And to the extent that you are insulated from this cultural phenomenon, you probably have a very hard time relating to a lot of this stuff because it just doesn't happen in your everyday life. But in the Middle East, in the Muslim world, where there's 1.9 billion and there are 22 Muslim countries in the Middle East, there are actually 49 countries where Muslims are the majority. But there are 22 in the Middle East. It's a pretty tough neighborhood, okay, for believers. It's a pretty tough neighborhood that God decided to call his holy land, okay? The Jewish people are constantly under attack. You all know what's going on right now, what has been going on. Last time I was here was not long after October 7th. And the war is still going on. If DJT 45 was in the White House right now, I submit to you this war would not be happening. The man who's in the White House right now is not a friend of Israel. He's not even a friend of Jesus. He tells everyone he's a Catholic, but the Catholic Church will not even give him communion. That's taking political correctness to a whole nother level. So if 190 million Muslim, that says 165 million, which is actually incorrect because this slide, I've updated it. This is an older presentation, please forgive me. But there are 1.9 billion, and the number is actually 190 million. This is the credo of Islam. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Where did they get that from? Does that sound like an original statement to you? Deuteronomy. It's in the Bible. They took it, they usurped it to make it fit their agenda. That's the Saudi Arabian flag. That's the symbol of Islam. A sword. Does it seem peaceful to anyone? No, not really. It doesn't seem peaceful to me. Here's some quotes from the Quran. Allah stamped wretchedness on the Jews. They killed the prophets. Uh-oh. There we go. Allah has cursed the Jews for their unbelief. Kill disbelievers wherever you find them. This is what a dedicated Muslim is supposed to do. Kill disbelievers. So, let me give you a quick example. Jim and I are out for a cup of coffee. I find out that he's not obeying all the tenets of Islam. He's a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. I'm supposed to kill him. Send him to his reward. Tough, tough, tough. Don't take Jews or Christians for friends. If you do, then Allah will consider you to be one of them. War is ordained by Allah, and all Muslims must be willing to fight whether they like it or not. Jews and Christians are evildoers. Evil is the handiwork of rabbis and priests. It's not just Jews that's the problem. You, Christians, are the problem as well. So don't think you've escaped from this. You got a target on your back just like I do, okay? I'm even worse because I'm a Jew who's become a believer. So I got 2 strikes against me, ostensibly. At the bottom, no son did Allah beget, nor is there any God along with him. That is a direct attack against Jesus. Are we moving here? Uh-oh. Did we run out of batteries? Oh, there we go. This poor woman is confused. She's heard about the Trinity all of her life. Islam will tell you, never mind. It's no good. It'll do you no good. Need I say anything else? Do y'all remember about 10 years ago, there was an editor of a Danish newspaper that ran an image of Muhammad in his paper? You remember what happened to him? He was killed. You are not allowed to do that. How many of you have seen paintings or drawings of Jesus? We all have. Is it an insult? Is it a crime? You can't do that in Islam. Now, I can tell from what's going on here that you're hearing things that you just can't believe. And I tell you again, 90% of the world's Muslims do not believe this and do not act this way. The problem is that there's 190 million of them. That's the problem. And we should be aware of the world we live in. About the time that Obama was elected president, and by the way, for those of you who aren't sure, Barack Obama is a Muslim. By Islam's definition. See, in Judaism, if my mother is a Jew, I'm automatically a Jew. I may not be a good Jew. I may be a criminal, but I'm still considered a Jew. In Islam, it's through the father. And Barack Hussein Obama's biological father was a Muslim. So by definition, he's a Muslim. About that time, a movement was launched called A Common Word Between Us. Okay? Let me read to you what this is about. It's very interesting. A whole bunch of Islamic leaders, scholars, imams, and what have you, decided that they were going to inform Christianity what they had in common with Islam. So they wrote this document. Let me share this with you. Their verb, their words, Muslims and Christians together make up well over half of the world's population. Without peace and justice between these two religious communities, there can be no meaningful peace in the world. The future of the world depends on peace between Muslims and Christians. Notice, nothing about Jews. The basis for this peace and understanding already exists. It is in part the very foundational principles both faiths have: love of one God, love of the neighbor. We've all heard it. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your might, and love your neighbor as yourself. These are the first two most important commandments. These principles are found over and over again in the sacred text of Islam and Christianity. The unity of God, the necessity of love for Him, and the necessity of love of the neighbor is thus the common word between Islam and Christianity. So, this was sent to a whole bunch of Christian leaders. In response to this effort by the Muslims, the Christian leadership got together and wrote this: loving God and neighbor together, a Christian response to a common word between us. As members of the worldwide Christian community, we were deeply encouraged and challenged by the recent historic open letter signed by 138 leading Muslim scholars and clerics and intellectuals from around the world. Right, intellectuals, right away, you know there's a problem. A common word between us and you identifies some core common ground between Christianity and Islam, which lies at the heart of our respective faiths as well as the heart of most ancient Abrahamic faith. Here's the kicker. Before we shake your hand in responding to your letter, we ask forgiveness of the All-Merciful One and of the Muslim community around the world. What are they saying? These Christian leaders are apologizing for not recognizing what's common between Christianity and Islam. Now, I've shared with you already all these important components, okay? What is there about Islam and Christianity that they have to apologize for not understanding? Who's not understanding? I think the Muslims understand things quite well. I think what they're trying to do here is convince the Christian community that they need to modify their beliefs and get friendlier with Islam, which is bent on world domination. So, who are these Christians that bought into this? Can we get the clicker to move here? This is a screenshot of a large number of Christians that bought into this. You can't see it, I know. You can send me an email and I'll send you the presentation. Just go to our website and send an email. These guys bought into it. The guy on the left, Bill Hybels, at the time was the lead pastor of a 22,000 attendee church right outside Chicago called Willow Creek. The guy on the right, we all know who that was. He's now graduated. The guy in the middle, Pastor Rick Warren, head of a huge church in Southern California. He's not there anymore, but he was at the time. And he was one of the leading proponents of this. These are some others in the Christian community that agreed with this and wanted to apologize. My friends, let me make a very tough statement, as if I haven't made any already. Why are these Christian leaders willing to water down their faith in order to share, quote unquote, a common word with a group of people who are theologically opposed to them? I don't understand it, but I believe it's important for people to know. You may not do anything. You may leave here tonight and say, so what happened? What did you hear? This Jewish believer got up there and said all the Muslims are schnooks. No. But this is information. Information is power. You should be aware of these kinds of things. I don't know what you'll do with it, but you should be aware. This is the leader of Hamas, the group that is attempting to annihilate Israel and wipe out the Jews everywhere. And when he says, we love death like you love life, he means it. Remember I told you about the young kid who wanted to be a shaheed, wanted to be a martyr? That's critically important in Islam. Again, fundamental Islam. Islam is growing by leaps and bounds. This is Times Square a couple of months ago. The Big Apple. They had to close the streets. There were so many Muslims in the streets praying. They had to close the streets. Now, you saw the picture a couple minutes ago of Pastor Rick Warren. The Muslims call Jesus Isa. Now, I showed you what Isa is, who he is, and what he will do. He will destroy Christianity. You saw that, okay? You saw that. Now, we've all heard the name Jesus, Yeshua, Jesus for Hispanics. Is Isa the same as that? That's what the Muslims call him. But listen to what Pastor Rick Warren said when President Obama was inaugurated. Can we play that? No? No? No, apparently it's not going to play? Okay, I apologize for that. But Rick Warren prayed to the one who changed his heart. Jesus, Jesus, Isa, and Yeshua. I don't understand it. I wouldn't pray to that person. But that's what Rick Warren said. This is the Church of the Annunciation in Israel. It takes up an entire square city block, and banners like this completely cover all the outside walls of this Christian church. Jesus is a slave of Allah. Jesus is a slave of Allah. This is the Dome of the Rock, the biggest structure in the old city of Jerusalem. Look at the drawing, or the picture rather, on the right. See those etchings? They've been there for about 1,300 years. And look at the image closely. Does it look a little satanic to you? Now let's go where the rubber meets the road, and then if you don't throw darts at me, I'll be happy to take some questions and what have you. Israel is my firstborn son. Amen. This is my son who I am well pleased. Anyone who denies the Father and the Son is the Antichrist. So now we're getting down to what we all share in common. That is the Dome of the Rock. That is the largest structure in the old city of Jerusalem. The Ark of the Covenant may be right underneath it. Okay? Not in the Sea of Galilee. This is the book that our friend Walid Shoebat, actually he wrote several, but this is one which was very, very well read. Again, think opposite. What is holy to Christians and Jews is unholy to Muslims. Think opposite. Ground zero, Jerusalem. Now, that may look a little like Charlton Heston to you. I hope it doesn't. But this is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, making sure that we understand who he is, who we are. We are Bless Israel Network. You may, in fact, get in touch with us by going to our website, blessisraelnetwork.com. Send us a note. We rely on donations. So if you choose to donate this evening, on the back table, there are envelopes. We would appreciate it. We would be honored if you chose to support our ministry on a one-time basis or on an ongoing basis. Now, I can tell that you guys had some trouble with this message. I understand if you heard things that you haven't heard before. My job is to help inform you about things that you may not have heard before. And as difficult as it may be, we do live in a world where this is part of reality. And again, I want to make sure that you fully understand 90% of all the world's Muslims are not like this. The reason that I'm here, the reason that I'm sharing this with you, is because if 10% are, again, that's 190 million. We should be aware of who they are, what they believe, so you can be informed.